The Baltimore Ravens survive a brilliant performance by Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase, and both these teams look like they could be a problem in the playoffs. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Louis DiBiase. On today's show, you know we're going to give you some of the best bets of the weekend. We're going to talk about the Detroit Lions taking on the Houston Texans. We're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Washington Commanders in the game of the week. But first, we got to break down this classic Thursday night football matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Before we dive in, thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Louis, Cincinnati did choke this game after being up double digits early on, and Baltimore survived, but I still think both of these teams ended up in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow showed they might be the two most valuable players. Lamar's going to win the MVP award, but I think Joe Burrow might be the most valuable player from the purest definition of the word value.
100%. And, obviously, my guy Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens is hype after this one.
The Baltimore Ravens win an unreal comeback game over the Cincinnati Bengals in week number 10. I'm Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. 35-34, the final score after Cincinnati misses a 2-point conversion that would have put them up with just about 30 seconds to go in the game. Unreal performance from Lamar Jackson. The offense struggled early, but they came back with a vengeance. The defense, they ended up not really having a great game overall, but they got some timely stops, including a huge Marlon Humphrey forced fumble on Chase Brown that turned the fortunes in this game. Baltimore moves to 7-3, have a mini bye before their big Week 11 matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers. For more on the Ravens and their big Week 10 win, be sure to check out the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of Locked On Podcast Network.
Listen, I don't mean to poo-poo the performance of the Baltimore Ravens. This was a fantastic game by Lamar Jackson. Once again, Derrick Henry was okay in this game. Cincinnati did a good job of kind of keeping him bottled up for Derrick Henry standards, at least. But still, that Baltimore Ravens defense, like, if you think about where Baltimore wants to go and what Baltimore's expectations are this season, I still do not think that the Ravens are going to make it to the Super Bowl with the defense as currently constructed. And they didn't make enough moves. Tre'Davious White isn't a move to me that changes things. It doesn't move the needle. So while this was a great performance by Baltimore, I agree Lamar Jackson probably going to win his third MVP. I just don't see the Ravens as a real Super Bowl. I don't want to say Super Bowl contender because they certainly can be there, but I don't really think that they're going to make it there with the quality of their defense right now.
Yeah, this is not your dad's Baltimore Ravens defense. It's
Right.
not even Tyler, your older brother's Ravens defense. But I will say at the same time, considering how special Lamar Jackson was, I mean, he was surgical in that fourth quarter. And this was a rare, solid but not great Derrick Henry game. I don't think that will continue down the stretch. I do think, although the defense is a problem when you look across the AFC and every team has issues, I still think when it comes to the best chance to make sure Kansas City does not represent the AFC, I still think this Ravens team is the best chance that conference has. But I totally agree with you, especially that secondary. It is a problem, and it's kind of interesting and surprising because Baltimore's invested a lot of premier assets in the secondary.
Yeah, 100%. And probably their best player on defense, Kyle Hamilton, left the game early and was on the sideline in street clothes with an ankle injury. So that's something that we have to monitor going forward that could make this defense even worse than what it's been at certain points. I do have to say, Louis, we will look at the Bengals, but I'm not quite so certain. I think the Buffalo Bills may be that team that stands the best chance this year. But that is a discussion for another time. On the Cincinnati side, I said it at the beginning. I think both these teams still make the playoffs with the quality of the AFC this year, especially after the division leaders. But my guy, Jake Lisco from Locked On Bengals, he doesn't seem to be so optimistic.
A recurrent theme for the Cincinnati Bengals this season is coming up just short. Unfortunately, that happens again on Thursday Night Football as they fall to the Ravens, failing to convert a 2-point conversion toward the end of regulation. I'm Jake Lisco from the Locked On Bengals podcast, and at 4-6, the Bengals' path to the playoffs is perilous at this point, going 0-2 to the Baltimore Ravens, falling to 1-2 in the AFC North. The game they were leading by 14 in the second half before Chase Brown fumbled the ball and Baltimore scored on 4 straight possessions to take the lead, with Burrow and the Bengals needing a last-second touchdown to have a chance to take the lead in regulation. They failed the 2-point conversion, unfortunately. Instead, Terry McCauley, the consultant for officiating on the broadcast, saying there could have been 2 different penalties called on the play. But that aside, the Bengals had their opportunities to pull away more than they did early in this game or to get a single stop down the stretch. And they didn't do those things. And as a result, they fall to 4-6 with close losses to the Ravens twice and the Kansas City Chiefs hanging over their heads.
Look, man, I mean, the Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs are 2 of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, it's not going to get super easy here for the Bengals. They go on the road against the Chargers next week. Then they play the Steelers, but they finish with the Cowboys, the Titans, the Browns, the Broncos, and then the Steelers once again. Like, they absolutely have a chance, especially with the Chargers and the Broncos and the Steelers. Like, those are teams that are going to be right in that mix. So Cincinnati absolutely has a chance to turn this around and still make the playoffs. Now, they might need to, run the table or maybe only lose 1 game the rest of the way, but I don't think that Cincinnati's playoff chances are over.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think Denver is going to last. I don't think they're going to consistently be in that playoff race. The Colts and Jets, as Jekyll and Hyde as any team in football. Yep. And Tyler, Joe Burrow, and I hate seeing teams fail an elite quarterback, and there's so many problems with this Bengals roster, both short-term and long-term, but Joe Burrow is playing like an MVP. I mean, again, He's not going to win the award because they're not going to be a top 2 seed, and that's normally who gets the award. But when it comes to the purest definition of value, as I said earlier, I don't think there's a single player that means more to their team right now than Joe Burrow. They might be one of the worst teams in football without number 9.
Yeah, absolutely. And him and Jamar Chase together, like, that's probably the most magical combination in the NFL. And I just want to say a few quick things, too, of other talking points. I love what Zach Taylor did in this game. I know some people think maybe he should have taken a field goal there late in the game, but be aggressive. He was aggressive throughout the game. I like going for 2 as well. And finally, you could call those penalties at the end, and I know that Bengals fans are going to freak out about that, but it's the last play of the game. I don't mind them not calling those penalties. I don't think they impacted where Joe Burrow went with the football, and I'm just more of a favor of swallowing the whistle at the end of those games. I didn't want the call when the Vikings, the face mask for that. I didn't want that called either. These things aren't affecting the game. Let them boys play. That's how I feel there.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bang-bang play. It's on the 1-2 yard line, and I agree. I like the aggression there. No matter what, Lamar Jackson was going to get the ball back with a chance to win the game, so I'd rather put the game in Joe Burrow's hands than your defense. So I think some would disagree with that, but I'm with you. I think it was the right call, even though the result wasn't what they wanted.
100%. What a magical football game. What a great Thursday night football game. And I think we could get some more great football games. Remember, it's FanDuel Friday. We're going to go over our best bets of the week as well. And Lou will tell me if I'm crazy on some of these. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Mahomes rookie card or an Ellie De La Cruz rookie card, it just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and a clear hit rate for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pools are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform for you. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl. Use the code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl. Use the code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. Today's episode is also brought to you by Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing the men's healthcare marketplace by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides you access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan. All right, Louis, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about that great Thursday night football matchup, but now it's time to dive into some of my best bets of the weekend. It is a FanDuel Friday after all, and I'm going to start here with what probably is the best football game of the, it's going to be hard to top the game that we just saw, but on paper, the best football game of the weekend, we have the Washington Commanders and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers going on the road here. And I got to tell you, I got belief in the Pittsburgh Steelers in this one, but let's hear from David Harrison and Chris Carter from their crossover, Steelers and Commanders.
You got to make them one-dimensional. The Steelers' entire defensive philosophy is about, we're going to take away the run so that we can put you in predictable passing situations so that TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Cam Hayward and now Nick Herbig and Preston Smith, all these guys, they're coming for you, and you're going to have maybe 2 to 3 seconds to get that ball off. And we're going to trust that our coverage behind it can create some schemes that'll confuse you. Or if you try to rush the throw, we'll be in position to make the interception and create turnover plays. That's the first key there. Stuff the runs so you can put yourself in that situation. Second key, protect Russell Wilson back there. Like you were talking about getting after him and trying to get that. Broderick Jones has been struggling. The first round pick from last year, he's been struggling in pass protection with his hands. If I'm the Steelers, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that he is not killing Russell Wilson and killing drives by giving up pressures in this game. The Steelers expect to get center Zach Frazier back for this game. He's their starter. He's their second round pick this year. He's been phenomenal when he's been healthy. And I think that's somewhere they can trust. But if I'm looking for anything, if I'm the Commanders, I'm trying to circle Broderick Jones. If I'm the Steelers, I'm saying we are protecting Russell Wilson.
The best way to protect Russell Wilson is to run the football. And the Commanders have been one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, especially in the last few weeks. They have given up over 149 or more rushing yards in like 3 straight games. The Steelers' run game, on the other hand, has finally come alive with Najee Harris, and they've been over 100 yards for a few weeks. So I think the Steelers' run game and then their pass rush actually allows them to have success here. I am taking the Steelers plus 2.5 on the road against the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, Tyler, I do agree with you on this one. And this one's interesting because it's two win teams, or I should say 2 lost teams that were like, Are they contenders in their conference? Are they not? Mm-hmm. This is a good test. I would say especially for Washington because they really haven't beaten a lot of good teams. Right. Eagles week looms large. It's a big Thursday night matchup coming up. They got to make sure they don't overlook this Pittsburgh team who just added Preston Smith already to a really good pass rush. So 100%. I think it's going to be a 1-score game, and I actually believe in the Steelers this year, unlike the past few years. I do think they're legit, so I'll take them to cover. I might even take the money line in this one, so I agree with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you think the Steelers are going to be within 2.5 since it doesn't cross that 3-point barrier.
Yeah.
I wish that it were at 3 points, but either way, the money
Same.
line at 2.5 might be better off going there. But you know me, I get a little worried, Louis. I can't help it. I got to take a little bit of those points. I could see this one being, 24-23, something like that. But moving right along, another great game with an AFC contender, the Kansas City Chiefs look to stay undefeated against the Denver Broncos. And look, the Broncos are 7.5-point underdogs in this one. And I think that is far too many points. And I think turnovers could be a big point in this game. And my guy, Chris Clark and Sayer Bettinger from Broncos and Chiefs talked about that this week.
You mentioned how the Chiefs are -4 in takeaway. And one of the things you also said you want to talk about with this show is winning the turnover battle. And that has been a key for the Chiefs the entire season is they need to try to find a way to win the turnover battle. This is the first week that they're going to be coming off a game where Mahomes didn't turn the ball over. They still lost the turnover battle because Kelsey had a fumble and they didn't get a takeaway. But this is the first week that Mahomes hasn't thrown an interception. It's crazy to think about that going into week 9. Sorry, I guess this is week 10, playing your 9th game. But that's where Kansas City has been. What have you seen from the Broncos so far this season?
Well, the Broncos have done a good job of creating havoc for the opposing quarterback and setting themselves up really well to cause turnovers.
I think the Broncos will be able to cause a little bit of turnovers. Let me just say this. Couple of factors here. Number one, Kansas City on a short week played an overtime game. Patrick Mahomes, a little bit banged up. He's going to be sore after that ankle issue that he had. The Broncos got embarrassed on the road all the way across the country against Baltimore. That's going to have them more fired up. And this is a division game, and division games are always a little bit closer than you expect because the teams know each other so well. I don't think that the Broncos win this game, but I am once again going to the well of Denver. I think plus 7.5 is great value. That's why I'm taking Denver to cover in this one.
Yeah, and the Chiefs win one-score games. This is what they've been doing for the last 2 years, and it feels like Patrick Mahomes almost – I don't want to say he doesn't care until the fourth quarter, but it feels like they kind of coast. His numbers don't look great the first 3 quarters, and then they're elite when it matters most late in the football game. But I do think eventually the Chiefs have to put together a complete game, or at least I'd want to hope so. And DeAndre Hopkins looked really good last game. I think Mahomes, again, as they mentioned, did not turn the ball over, started to put things together. I agree that most of the time this year I would take the Chiefs or the Broncos to cover, but I think the Chiefs are finally going to win a game by multiple scores. So I actually think they will cover that 7.5.
I love that. Yeah. It's a little face-off. We'll see what happens here. There are some great games on the other side of this too. I mean, the Lions take on the Texans. I know that's one team from each conference, but the Lions are probably the best team in the NFC. And then San Francisco comes off their bye and really needs to turn their season around. We're going to talk about those games, and I got some bets on those games that I want to go over as well. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Look, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role in a given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you aren't looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Today's episode is also brought to you, of course, by FanDuel Sportsbook. You need to get ready to tackle the second half of the NFL action this season with FanDuel. Again, it's America's #1 sportsbook because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Kansas City Chiefs money line might be a really safe play for that $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Louis, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Again, it's a FanDuel Friday, giving out some of our best bets of the weekend after breaking down that incredible Thursday night football game. Before we dive into some of my bets on the NFC side of things, do want to remind you to check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins. Step into the barbershop and chop up some of the best NFL topics as we head into another week of NFL games. But diving back into the bets here, I gave you Steelers plus 2.5. Me and Louis are aligned there. A little bit of a face-off on the weekend with the Kansas City Chiefs. I like the Broncos plus 7.5. Louis is riding Kansas City to get a double-digit win in that one. So very interesting to see how that plays out. But the next game I want to look at here is the Detroit Lions, who come off a huge win against the Green Bay Packers, going down to Houston, going down to Texas to take on a reeling Houston Texans team that, you know, coming off a 10-day streak here of a mini bye, we'll call it, after losing to the New York Jets. Their offensive line is in shambles. Nico Collins, eligible to come off IR, but didn't practice the first few days of the week, so probably be hard to see him coming back this week. That's why I really like the Lions in this one, minus 3.5, and I think my guy Matt Derry from Locked On Lions is feeling pretty similar.
You know, John, I look at the Lions, and they've got to get pressure on Stroud. You mentioned it before. When C.J. Stroud has been under duress and under fire these last few weeks with the O-line issues that you've had, he just hasn't been the same guy. It's basic football. It's the same thing with Jared Goff. Jared Goff has been upright for the last few weeks, and he's been on a roll. Lions picked up Zadarius Smith for opportunities like this. Mentioned Pascal coming back. A guy like Trevor Nowaski coming off the edge might get some opportunities. I think getting pressure and getting in that face of C.J. Stroud. Watch Aleem McNeil coming from the middle and that nose tackle spot, too, is a very good interior pass rusher. I think that could obviously play a big role in this game. Lions get an interception or two off a bad throw. Also, I just think the Lions have got to stick with what they do. I know it's Sunday Night Football. I know it's prime time. Everybody's going to be watching. This is a really good matchup. Last thing you want Ben Johnson to do is to turn this offense too pass happy like they did earlier in the year in the Tampa Bay loss. Keep running the football.
I think there's something in the water in Houston. I think they're getting ready to have a little bit of a regression. That offensive line, look, they have not been as good of a team as it looks all year long. Their down-to-down efficiency has not been good. They have not had any consistency on offense. They've just been hitting big plays. And now with Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins out, those big plays aren't as accessible for the Texans. So I think with that in mind, I think Detroit is going to stomp Houston in this one. So I'm definitely riding with the Lions minus 3.5.
Yeah, I actually am too. The Lions are the hottest team in football with the hottest quarterback right now. I mean, Goff consistently every week is completing over 10% of his passes, over expectation. I mean, he's been elite. And yeah, you're right. Like the Texans, nothing is felt completely right. Something's felt off all year. Even when Nico Collins was healthy and they had Tank Dell ready to go and Stephon Diggs. And it really is that offensive line. Now you take away those weapons. Will Anderson's also been banged up this week, missed 2 practices already. If Goff stays healthy and stays upright, I don't know how they don't win by more than 3.5. So, yeah, I like that as well. I think they cover.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we got a big matchup in the NFC between the San Francisco 49ers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And there's a little bit of history here, and I think it's going to make for an interesting game. I got James Yarko and Brian Peacock from Locked On Bucks and Locked On 49ers break down that matchup.
I don't know if Todd Bowles is going to get that win over Kyle Shanahan in this one. And I don't know if it's necessarily an X's and O's thing, although it's funny that Kyle Shanahan really has people's number and does really good jobs against certain coaches. And then some coaches have his number, and he always struggles against them. And it's really interesting how that works, and it tends to always work out that way. And so we'll see if it continues to go that way. But for the 49ers, I do expect, even though it's an East Coast game and an early start and some travel, they're coming off a bye, short week for the Bucs. They went into overtime with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I would think that would all nullify and make it a pretty even game, even though it's a road game for the 49ers, since they're well rested and getting some players back and coming off a bye. And Kyle Shanahan, by the way, I think he's only lost one game the last few years in November, and has been really good post bye.
You give a good coach like Kyle Shanahan a bye, I think you're going to be in good shape. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense hasn't been much to talk about this year. And some of the factors we talked about earlier, Tampa Bay coming off a short week off Monday Night Football on the road, an overtime game. San Francisco coming off a bye. That's too big of a rest disadvantage. And San Francisco's looking like they're going to get Christian McCaffrey back. Fred Warner's getting a little bit more healthy. I love San Francisco -6.5. I think they're going to stomp Tampa Bay in this one.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield's having a really good season, but I just think it's too much to handle, right? I think San Francisco's getting healthy, as you mentioned. It's kind of do or die time for Tampa Bay, and coming off a tough
San Francisco
overtime
too,
loss.
man.
Yeah, exactly.
With Arizona,
they can't afford
and
to
Los
lose
Angeles.
here. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the 49ers are healthy. They're not desperate. Like you said, it's kind of a must-win situation. It's such a loaded NFC and NFC West. I can't imagine the 49ers don't win this game handily. Again, I think Baker Mayfield's going to keep them in this game for a little bit, but I think ultimately the 49ers do run away.
Yeah, I think the second half, it's like in basketball when a team is playing on back-to-back nights, and in the fourth quarter, their energy just kind of finally gives out on them.
Mm-hmm.
Tampa Bay's going to run out of gas late in this game, and I think San Francisco's going to have the ability to kind of pour it on here. I think, we might be looking at 28-20, something like that. So I like the 49ers in this one, and the 49ers to kind of turn things around for their season. But with that is going to do it for today's FanDuel Friday edition of Locked On NFL. As I tell you guys every time, make sure that you check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins. Get subscribed, stay subscribed for year-round free NFL content here on the Locked On NFL podcast. For me, your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, and my co-host, Louis DiBiase. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as I tell you every week and every episode, stay safe out there.